Hello everyone, this is Ollie here from the Nexus, and today I'm coming to you with the first installment of hopefully what's going to be a longer standing series on the channel. As you can see up above me, it's going to be called BigONotation's Jank Tank. Now, one thing I love about Star Wars Unlimited is that it's a game where deck building creativity is hugely rewarded, as we've seen in the recent Galactic Championships and all throughout the game's life. And I'm a person who loves deck building, although I wouldn't say I'm very confident in my ability to deck build in this game in particular yet. But it's something that I'm always practicing and always striving to be better with. And in doing that, I'm always trying to find new, fun, interesting combos that can work together to some sort of potential level of success. Whether that be just to have some fun games on Karabast, or eventually maybe it's a deck that I can take to a store showdown, a PQ, some sort of bigger event to try and do well with. And that's all a part of the process. I imagine that's something that a lot of the people watching go through as well. So I wanted to make a series kind of going through a lot of the decks that I really enjoy playing, a lot of the different synergies that I end up spotting that I want to build around, and kind of just the decks that I end up playing on Karabast over the last week or couple of weeks, and really trying to refine to see if there's any possibility there. Now, whilst all of these decks may be very fun to play and all of the synergies that I find are pretty interesting and cool, you're not going to find the Galactic Championship winning deck on the first try, the meta breaker, right? That just cracks everything open. Everyone is picking up your cards and reading them while they're getting slaughtered. That just doesn't happen very often. Now, that might be my dream eventually, but right now I'm very satisfied with just having a couple of fun games on Karabast and seeing where it goes from there. In saying that, I'm very aware that a lot of the decks that I present on this series are not going to be the most competitive kind of thing. That is for when we're, going through more competitive stuff as a team, and we'll be displaying all of that as well, I'm sure, but also displaying decks that we've actually played in events as well, so that there's results to back it up. And we've got all of this data, matchup data that we can go through with you guys as well. But these videos are meant to be a little bit more fun, a little bit more casual, a little bit less editing going into it. I'm just going to be spitballing my thoughts on what I think about this deck, or what I think that with this synergy that I've spotted, that I think could be quite fun to build around. And I'll let you guys decide the rest. You guys can figure out the ideal deck list. I will be giving example deck lists, obviously, that I have put together that I really like, but they're not going to be the most refined thing ever. They're not going to be, like I said, the Galactic Championship, the PQ winning even top deck list. But if you guys end up thinking that there's something that I haven't spotted, you guys can go away and do your thing with that. I'm just kind of here to present the idea that I've really enjoyed messing around with, and kind of see where it goes. I'm sure if any of them do develop to me taking them to events, I'll provide updates as well. Maybe there'll be some sort of rating system that I can do in the future based on to gauge how competitive I actually think the deck or the idea is. And also in the future, maybe we can pick one or a couple of these for a couple of the team members to take to some big events, just to really put our skills to the test, see how well we can do in a room full of Hantu Blues and Bow before Data Vaults. We can take one of these things and see what we can cook up, because like I said before, Star Wars Unlimited rewards good deck building, but also knowing your deck and knowing your deck better than the opponent. You want that feeling of your opponent picking up your cards and not knowing what they do, but also it's going to give you a huge advantage in the game. So there is the potential for some of these to maybe get through the cracks and do something. But in saying that, that's enough of my rambling. You guys haven't seen just me doing videos on this channel before, so be prepared for a lot of rambling, because I'm a bit all over the place as a person in general. But today we're going to be doing, as you can see over here, the bullet points and all that, we're going to be running through Ackbar, but not just any Ackbar. I'm sure you have all seen Ackbar Data Vault by now. It's done well at 2 or 3 events, I believe. It did well at a couple of events last set. One of them was myself, one of them was DJ Claro, my goat. one of the deck building masterminds in this game. And I also think that there was an Ackbar Data Vault that did well in this set with the droid package using Babu Frick. So very interesting stuff. But we're not going to be talking about Ackbar Data Vault today. That is for another time. That deck is already well established as a decent deck that can get some results. We're going to be talking about Ackbar Colossus. And I've got a couple of bullet points here, not that side, to showcase what Ackbar wants to do and how blue helps with this, how I ended up on trying out Ackbar Colossus. And then we'll go through the deck list. There's a couple of cool synergies in the deck, of course, and I'll explain everything. So we're going to start with, what does Ackbar want to do? We've got 3 points here. The first point is survive. Ackbar is a 6 deploy leader, so, you know, not super late, not like the 7s, the 8s, the Yodas, Palpatines, the Avar Chris's, but it's not a 4 or 5. It's not Quinlan, it's not Sabine, it's not Han2, it's not these like early deploy meta contender leaders, right? They're not, it's not going to have the biggest board presence in the early game. But what it does have is it has an inherent value engine. You pay 1, you tap one of your units, you get a 2/2. A 2/2 in space for 1 mana is on rate, or even potentially slightly above rate, but I'd probably argue just on rate is fine. But being able to pay 1 for a 2/2 that draws a card every turn is way above rate. Extremely, extremely strong ability. The downside is that you have to exhaust one of your units every turn. So you have to be very wary of your opponent board controlling you. And so we've established Ackbar has a brilliant, brilliant value engine. It wants to get to the late game. It wants to just overwhelm your opponent with card advantage and board presence. But it has to get there. And this kind of brings us on to the second point of you have to tap a unit every turn. And if you have to exhaust a unit every turn, you're going to want your units to survive. So Ackbar wants to play high health units. From the very start of the game, you're going to notice in the list and in most lists that you'll see for Ackbar across all colors, there are a lot of high health units in the droid version. You play all of the droids, they're all 1 mana 1/4s. You make it really hard for your opponent to kill your turn 1 play or multiple plays if you're playing multiple 1-drops. And from there, you try and start generating your tokens, start snowballing the space arena, while still controlling the ground as much as you can, with things like ambush and coordinate sentinel, all of that stuff. And the third and final point, so the third issue with Ackbar's ability, or I guess problem to solve in the deck building, is Ackbar's ability costs 1 mana, which, like we've already established, 1 mana for a 2/2 in space that draws a card, you don't have to use a card to play it every turn, is very above rate. However, exhausting a unit is an issue, but it also, if you want to be getting the most value out of this every single turn, you want to be using it every single turn, which means that you're going to be playing under curve. So turn 2, ideally, you're going to be using your leader skill to play a 2/2 in space, and you're also going to be playing a 2-drop to fill out the curve, instead of just playing a 3-drop. So we have to deck build with that in mind, and that's going to mean like more lower costed cards just in general. Now, how does blue help with all of this? So the first point is blue is one of, I believe, 2 colors at the moment. I don't think there's any other colors outside of green and blue that have this. But it is one of the 2 colors, off the top of my head at least, that has a base that is above 30 health. So obviously we have green, which is Data Vault, which is the successful, very good Ackbar build. But with blue, we have Colossus. And this is a big reason why I wanted to try out Ackbar Blue and why I've been enjoying it recently. Colossus is 35 health, so it actually has more health than Data Vault. And so this goes back to our first point of what does Ackbar want to do? It wants to survive. Going into our second point, blue helps with all of this because it has access to a lot of restore and a lot of healing. One of the best cards in the game, one of the best blue hero cards in the game, Luke Skywalker has restore 3. You heal 3 every time you swing with him. in the most recent set, which I think the most recent set supported Ackbar Blue a lot, actually, which is another reason I was looking at it. We got Yaddle, 2 mana, 2/4, restore 1. You just heal 1 every turn. It's great. So you get a lot of healing throughout the game, just gradual restore, and you have big base health. So blue, obviously, very good at survivability. And we go on to the third point, which I'm going to kind of talk about a bit more when it comes to the actual deck list, but I just want to mention it now. We have Republic synergies. If any of you have seen the Ackbar Data Vault decks that have been running around, I'd imagine that most of them are running the, I think it's Favorable Delegate. The Favorable Delegate. 2 mana, 1/5. When played, draw a card. When defeated, discard a card. Has a very nice cycle effect. In Ackbar Data Vault, has great synergy with Bright Hope. That's fine. But the main reason that I'd argue that you run it is because it's a 2 mana unit that has 5 health and has a slightly impactful effect that just helps you like dig a little bit deeper. If it doesn't die throughout the game, you draw a card. But it's kind of just a cycle. But a big reason why is it's a 2 mana, 1/5. It's got 5 health. And you draw a card. And this card happens to have the Republic tag, which has kind of allowed access for a lot of other synergies throughout the deck. And a lot of other Republic cards in blue actually just have like very natural synergy with the Ackbar leader as well, which we'll go into as well. And the fourth point, how does blue help Ackbar, is weird vehicle gimmicks. Jump to Lightspeed brought a hell of a load of weird vehicle gimmicks, Ackbar leader being one of them himself. And I'd argue that blue heroism ended up with some of the weirdest but most interesting cards out of the whole set that haven't really seen any play, but there's definitely a home for them somewhere, and this deck could be it. So let's take a look at the deck list. So we're here with the deck list. We got Ackbar Colossus, as you can see, and the first thing we're going to cover is look at how many 2-drops there are. And we've even got 1-drops, Owen Lars. But we're counting here 3, 5, 8, 11, 13, 15 2-drops, and 3 1-drops. That is a potential 18 turn 1 plays. 15 ideal ones, because you don't really want to play Owen Lars turn 1. But 18 in total. Now, I haven't run the maths on this because I haven't really started properly refining the list yet. These are a lot of my first thoughts within like a first week of testing. So I'm not going to pretend that I know the maths on like Colossus mulligans or anything like that. Someone much cleverer than me can figure that out, I'm sure. Because even when I refine my deck lists, I tend not to do that because I don't really know how, or I can't be bothered. But the lesson here that we take away from this, and that we kind of touched on in the previous slide, Ackbar wants to play under curve. We want to be running a lot of 2-drops because we want to play a 2-drop on turn 1, and then on turn 2 we want to use Ackbar leader skill, and then we want to play another 2-drop. So we want to find 2 2-drops in the early turns, turn 1 and turn 2. Now, you could argue it's a synergy or an anti-synergy. I'm going to argue it's a synergy, but Colossus means that we start with 1 less card in our opening hand. Obviously, this is bad, but what it does mean is that we want to play more 2-drops because we have less of a chance of opening a 2-drop in our opening hand. Therefore, we want to play more 2-drops to increase the chances to make it feel like a normal deck, right? Ackbar already wants to play more than a normal deck's 2-drops because you want to find 1 on turn 2 and 1 on turn 1. So we're just running a load of 2-drops to facilitate this. There's an argument that you could run more. So far, I haven't found any problems with the turn 1, turn 2 plays with this lineup. So maybe I'm even in excess. But we also have, within our 2-drops, we have Favorable Delegate, and we also have R2D2, which are both helping us cycle. So if we find either of them for our turn 1 play, we get to look 1 or up to 3 cards deeper with the R2D2. to help us find a second 2-drop. So it's not entirely like locked in on the maths for finding the 2-drops with the Colossus, because you do get to dig a couple of cards deeper every game or two. But going through the 2-drop lineup, 3 Owen Lars, this is like, well, this is a 1-drop, but he's going to help us survive. He's going to help us with card draw. One of the other points that I'll touch on is that Colossus, obviously, you start with one less card in your hand, which I've already mentioned, but one thing that we want to keep in mind is that we do want some card draw in the deck, and we have a couple of cards to help mitigate this, because whilst Ackbar does generate you a lot of value, you still want to be playing cards alongside using his leader ability to keep your board healthy. Otherwise, eventually you'll just run out of units to exhaust if your opponent tries to clear your board. So Owen Lars helps facilitate a little bit of card draw or card cycling, especially getting you to your power plays, your Plos, your Anakins, your Lukes. And you'll notice just throughout the general 2-drop lineup, we're running a lot of high health units. We've got the favorable delegates, the R2D2s, and the Yaddles. I think they're all like pretty self-explanatory. Fireball is in there just as a little bit of space contention. I'll go through like some sideboard suggestions later on as well, but I think the third copy of this could be seen in the sideboard if this was taken to like even just the locals, but any sort of tournament or any sort of state where you'd want to play it in a best of 3. Because I think this card turn 1 into space aggro decks can be really helpful for the deck, especially if they open up with a 1 attack unit, because then you can either trade it into multiple units or use it to start generating tokens on your turn 2. Grogu is pretty self-explanatory as well. I think the main card that I want to touch on the 2-drop lineup is the Outspoken Representative. And this is really where the idea for the deck started to come together in my mind, because I already had the idea of like, let's just try Ackbar with Colossus and see what happens. And then I was scrolling through cards and I looked at this card and I was like, wait, we have Republic cards already in the deck. We have the Favorable Delegate, and we have R2D2. We want to be playing both those cards regardless of what happens. Those are both good cards in Ackbar. Outspoken Representative gains Sentinel when you have a Republic unit. It's also a 0/3, so it's not the tankiest of 2-drops, but at least it doesn't have 2 health, right? And in a meta of 2/4s, which we're currently in, it's probably not going to die on turn 2. It also has a when defeated skill, which is when defeated, it plays a clone token. So it kind of acts as an X5. I'm going to say X5 because like the attack value does change between the representative and the token. And it changes quite drastically too. But it acts as an X5, but it also gives you a second unit if they just have like hard removal. Like if your opponent is playing blue villainy and they open Power of the Dark Side on turn 2 with initiative, you still get the unit. So this card is like super sticky. This is prime token generation fuel. And then if it lives just as the 0/3, you don't even mind tapping it because it's just there as a 0/3 or it's a 0/3 Sentinel. And so it's never going to attack for anything anyways, but it's still offering you good utility, good board presence, and good stickiness all at the same time. So this is perfect for what the deck wants to be doing. And this is really where like the build around started to come together with the Republic synergies in general. Because we want to be running lots of 2-drops. This is a 2-drop. We want to be running sticky units that offer us good board presence and good utility and good defense. And this does all 3. So this is kind of just the perfect card for this deck. Moving on to the 3-drops. 2 Admiral Yularen. This is kind of what I was talking about when I mentioned like jump to light speed weird cards. Turns out if you give your like infinite supply of X-Wing tokens that you're generating Sentinel against space aggro decks, unless they have a card like Swoop Down, it is really, really hard for them to play the game. So this card is really nice. Again, another card that could go to 3 in the 60 if you are worried about space aggro in general. But it also just has like general utility outside of that. You can give out shields to your X-Wings against like green villainy decks to play around Overwhelming Barrage. You can give out Restore if you're against just any sort of aggressive ground-based strategy like a Sabine or something, just so that you can restore one with every single X-Wing, and you should hopefully get quite a few of those throughout the game. Just a very nice card all around. We got 3 Sanctioner Shuttle. This is a really nice card for Ackbar as well. You've seen this in the Data Vault versions, I'm sure. The deck goes wide. It generally has 3 units down by turn 2, and they're going to be sticky ones at that. And then turn 3 comes around, you still want to be playing under curve. You can play a 4th unit with your Ackbar skill, and then you can drop the Sanctioner's Shuttle. So even if they're able to kill 2 units along the way, as long as your leader skills don't get interrupted, you'll always have Coordinate live. And this card is very helpful against those aggro decks, but also against any just like decks that want to drop a pilot or any sort of upgrades early. We see a lot of Fallen Lightsabers on turn 2 as well at the moment, so this card is very, very efficient at dealing with those kind of threats. We've got 3 Yoda in as well. This is supplementing card draw. It's also offering you Force units for the Owen Lars, because, to be honest, there aren't very many Force units to grab off of Owen at the moment. So I wanted to supplement with that. But Yoda also helps you survive, but also supplements the card draw. And then we've also got 2 Perilous Position. I've gone a bit back and forth on this card between this and Village Protectors. I think it depends whether you're expecting more ground aggro or space aggro, but Village Protectors also being a unit is very helpful for Ackbar, just because you want to have a high density of units so that you always have a board to generate more tokens with. The off-color card, we got Power of the Dark Side. This is obviously for Anakin. And then as for our 4-drops, we got 2 Kira and 2 Tobias Beckett. So Kira's just in there as a nice way to try and disrupt stuff. This color combination does not have very strong 4-drops in general. I could see you potentially running Kanan if you want to get some more healing going. But I wanted to try Kira at the moment. I feel like Kira offers generally more value and more utility than a Kanan would. And the Tobias Beckett is there to, again, supplement card draw, but also to feel like the 4-5 drop curve, because this color combination also doesn't have the strongest 5 drops outside of Plo Koon. So Tobias Beckett kind of fills 2 roles there, as well as supplementing the card draw. And like, it's kind of just Yellow-Blue's version of Lompike if you're not playing Villainy, which is really helpful. It's slightly weaker, of course, and the effect is a lot more situational, but it's not too bad, especially for a card that has Smuggle. And then we've got 2 Fellow Dragons. One of the big draws of Ackbar Blue as opposed to Ackbar Data Vault is it has just like efficient removal. Outside of like having to use the Resistance Blue Squadron to count up all your tokens and try and measure out the damage, Blue doesn't have to worry about any of that. You can just fell the dragon, the big thing, instead. And same with off-color of Power of the Dark Side. If you're able to keep their board under control, this just becomes a 5-mana kill whatever you want at the end of the day. Speaking of 5 mana, we got Plo Koon. This deck turns on Coordinate, like I mentioned earlier. And it's also a Republic card, so that has more synergies, as you may be able to see later. We got 3 Anakin, 3 Luke. This is just like the best top end ever at the moment. And you'll see probably in a couple more episodes of this, I've just been building every deck I can that can play Anakin. One thing that's really cool about this deck is that it does have ways to set up Anakin outside of just playing the Power of the Dark Side for 5. You have R2-D2 to cycle the Power of the Dark Side search top 3, which is, again, an argument that R2-D2 could go up to more than 2 copies. But we also have the Favorable Delegate. If you're able to get this killed at the right sort of time, you can discard the Power of the Dark Side off of the Favorable Delegate's effect. Obviously, you don't want the Delegate to die in an ideal situation, which maybe makes an argument for the R2-D2 because it's a little bit easier to set up and more favorable in general. Pun entirely intended. But the Delegate is still another way to... the Power of the Dark Side even is another way to make the Delegate discard feel a little bit less bad in setting up that Anakin. And Anakin is really your bridge into the late game. If you can get a turn with full power Anakin plus your leader flip, it gets really out of hand really quickly. And then the last two cards you can see above me, but you kind of can't because my camera is blocking the ratios. There's 1 Tranquility and 2 Redemptions currently. I have been fighting to find the second Tranquility spot somewhere in the list at the moment. And the reason being is that I found out that Anakin Skywalker is a Republic card. And you've already heard how much I love this card, I'm sure, earlier in this video, but also in any of our podcasts that we've done recently. Anakin Skywalker is like my favorite card at the moment. And it's like the only card that I got the Galactic promos off, basically, because I'm so in love with it. And Tranquility can add it back to your hand from the discard. And I've been looking for something like this. I've been thinking of playing Palpatine's Return to play it, but then I'm just playing green blue villainy, and that's really boring. But Tranquility adds Anakin back, and this is what I've been super excited about trying out. And this deck already naturally wants to play all of these 2-drops that can enable Anakin through their many discard outlets. And Tranquility offers you this endgame mega value engine of just cycling Anakins back to your hand, cycling extra copies of Tranquility back to your hand as well is an option. But yeah, in general, like, you just have really, really insane late game. You just have to get there and survive in general. So yeah, that's why I'm super excited about this deck. It's got some really cool Republic synergies. The leader and the base combination incentivizes you to use all of these Republic synergies already. And then Anakin is just like a huge bonus that came in the latest set that really ties everything together in my eyes. So, what are the deck's strengths? Well, I would argue it does well into control. We know that value engines will naturally do well into control because you're generally going to be able to like 2-for-1 or 3-for-1 a lot of their cards and win out in the card advantage war in the late game. They're not going to threaten your base health so much, and you have more than enough base health to worry about like the odd Maul overwhelm, especially with your restore cards as well. So I'd argue it does well into control. The main card to watch out for is Supreme Leader Snoke, which will wipe your board full of tokens, and there's no way to stop that in this deck. I did try and find some like stuff in this color combination to help with that, but I couldn't find much that was great. But you do have Fel the Dragon to immediately kill Snoke. You also have Anakin and Luke to give it -6/-6 immediately. So you can bring it back very easily from a Snoke. And this version of Ackbar isn't as all-in on the X-Wing token plan as a Data Vault version is, I'd argue. This version can play like a lot more in the ground with its units and doesn't rely on the X-Wing synergies as much. It's just an added bonus that gets you over the line in the late game a lot of the time, acts as a Power of the Dark Side insulator, and forces your opponent to keep answering them as well. I'd also argue that the deck actually surprisingly does quite well into space aggro, especially post-sideboard once you get like the 3rd Yularen in, the 3rd Fireball, and potentially like Concord Dawn Interceptors in there as well. Perilous Positions we've already got in the main board for this version. But Blue Hero in general just has like a lot of interesting tools to help deal with the space arena. And with the addition of Yularen being able to synergize really well with your leader skill to just keep blocking them with Sentinels as long as they don't interact with the ground, then it's really, really easy to just keep chump blocking everything. Fireball opening turn 1 can be backbreaking against a Vader 4 if they open poorly or if they open with a 1-attack 1-drop unit. Yeah, I think space aggro is generally okay, and you can get to those Lukes, those Anakins, those Tranquilities. Maybe it's worth looking at like Rivals Fall as a one-of in the sideboard as well to just ensure that you can deal with the Vader flip as well without having to continuously chump block with your Sentinels off of Yularen. But the deck also has like really good restore. It's got Owen, it's got Yaddle, it's got Yoda, and then it's got Luke in the late game and Redemption. So your ground arena going uninteracted with still provides you value and still provides you sustainability in the long term. The deck's weaknesses. So we're running Colossus Space, and We do have some draw power to supplement it. We have Tobias, Yoda, and Owen, but we don't have a whole lot. I will admit to that. So I will say that hand control in general is a little bit of a problem. Force decks, especially Force Throw, is pretty backbreaking against this deck in general. It's the classic of like if they see 2 Force Throw, it's super hard to play, and I feel like that's the case for most decks anyways. But this deck especially is, they're gonna blow up at least one of your units off of that. And then God forbid you get pillaged against like a Kylo 5 Tarkentown. The other thing that I'd argue this deck struggles with is just like generally mid-range decks with good board control. Your Quinlans will probably be a little bit tricky. Again, going back to like the Force things, the Force mid-range decks are going to be tricky because they do both of these things very well. So like your Hantu Blues are probably going to hurt a little bit. But maybe that's like a matchup you just worth testing out a little bit. But yeah, like Hantu Blue, Anakin, Yoda are probably going to sting quite a bit. Worth grinding out those matchups and seeing if there's any text to be sideboarding there. And speaking of sideboard options, because this video has gone a little bit longer than I had intended, I tend to ramble a little bit too much about games that I enjoy. But I was hoping that these would be more like between 15-20 minutes. Here we are at 30-minute mark already. Potential sideboard options, you can see a bunch on the screen this side up here. Yeah, I've already mentioned the 3rd Fireball, 3rd Yularen, potentially Concord Dawn Interceptors into space aggro. We got Lothwolf as a potential extra 2-drop to swap out interchangeably with some of the others. The fact that it can't attack isn't a downside for this deck because you can tap it for your leader skill to generate X-Wing tokens. You got Cloud Rider to deal with ground aggro decks as well. So Lothwolf and Cloud Rider kind of filling a similar role there. Anakin Pilot is very nice as a potential game ender. I would like to find space again as a one-off in the deck somewhere would be helpful. It has a lot of value as a one-off, so it would be nice. And then Tech potentially could come in. If you want more smuggle cards, you could play Hotshot Blaster as well to get you those trades into the ground aggro decks. But honestly, so far I haven't found like Sabine too hard for this list. Similar to Space Aggro, I think aggro in general is just like manageable for this deck because it starts with 35 health and then probably goes up to like 45 throughout the game just off of your restore. But yeah, Village Protectors would also help with that. And then some of the more fun ones that I chucked in the sideboard was Zillow Beast and the Invasion of Christophsis. Zillow Beast could just be like another big top end card. If you stop seeing aggro or you don't expect to see much aggro in your meta, Redemption could come out. Zillow Beast could go in as just like a bigger threat. And then Invasion of Christophsis, this deck can actually feasibly pull it off because you generate so many tokens. But my logic was like, if you get to the point where you're able to pull this off and still have some semblance of a board left yourself and have it be efficient in general, you're probably already in a very winning position. So I don't think you need to be casting this to win that game anyways. And you already have removal like Fell the Dragons and Power of the Dark Sides, Anakin's, Luke's. It's very easy for you to kill stuff in this deck, so you probably don't need it. It's a bit of a win more card. But yeah, that is enough rambling from me. That is Anakin Colossus. I hope you guys have enjoyed the first episode of this installment. Oh, before I finish up as well, chuck your Tranquilities up to 3 copies against Control, because that card is amazing. But I hope you've enjoyed this rambling from me and the first installment of this series. We're going to be having guests on in the future as well. Not regularly, but every so often. I think there will be a guest next episode, so stay tuned for that, because I'm pretty excited for that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. This has been very fun to film. There'll be much more in the works, as well as much more from the rest of the team, I'm sure. So stay tuned, hit the sub, hit the like, all of that good stuff, and we'll catch you in the next one.